Thank you for auditing, the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's slowly getting around to some of the albums he missed over the year. My dad passed in February, so that was a weird month for me. I missed Dogsbody by model/actress, Actriz, spelled with a Z, and I really shouldn't have. I really enjoyed this album a lot. I normally have a little graphic, by the way, that says albums I missed 2023, but I left the graphic in my office, so you're just going to have to wait for that. And what I like about this album is I went into it totally blind, totally naked. No idea what I was going to be listening to, what it was going to be like. I just know that I put out a poll and I said, what albums should I review? And this got equal votes to the Jeff Rosenstock album. It actually got like 10 less votes. So I went with that album first and then I went with this. So I didn't know, what this was about. And I want to share with you sort of my first listen. I really enjoyed it. Sonically, it's great. It's exactly my kind of edgy, where it's not edgy for the purpose of being edgy. Great industrial sounds, but also it doesn't really get too electronic. It feels like it's people who know how to play their instruments, who are making sounds that sound kind of industrial and grinding. I really enjoyed this great, charismatic lead singer. And that's the thing that really drew me to this album and reminded me strongly of some feelings I had in the past. I don't think that this band is a lot like Nine Inch Nails. Okay, I'm not really a Nine Inch Nails guy. I saw them in concert a couple times 20 years ago. They're good. They're good. But I remember having these feelings listening to Nine Inch Nails, where I sort of thought, "Hey, is this guy gay?" And then the next thought, "Hey, am I gay?" Like the way Trent Reznor talked and sang and growled about sexuality. For a young, repressed guy like myself, I'm totally heterosexual, all that, but I did seriously question, I seriously questioned, and I left myself open to the possibility that I was not totally hetero. And music like Nine Inch Nails really helped to sort of push me to push that to its outer limits, because I could really resonate with the dark, dangerous sexiness of this voice. Now, I wasn't attracted to Trent Reznor. I was attracted to the feelings that he was drawing out. But I had very much the same feeling with this album. Now, you might be laughing because I now have come to learn, I've read some articles about them and seen their videos, and it turns out they are a very intentionally, or at least the lead singer is a very intentionally gay singer who sings about gay things. But I didn't know that when I first listened. So it was this whole period of dawning where I was like, oh, he said him, didn't he? Huh. Okay. Oh, he said, he's talking about looking into his eyes, So I sort of understood it. But what I like about it is, even though it very clearly is a very gay album, fundamentally, it's this fascinating story. It feels like a story about an asymmetrical love affair, where somebody loves more than they are loved, which many of us have had this experience. So does it matter? Does it even matter that it's gay? Well, of course it matters to the artist that they express who they are. But to a certain extent, to the listener, it doesn't fundamentally, because much like with Nine Inch Nails, what's interesting is the way that he goes into this human darkness, this longing, this pain, this humiliation, this debasement, the beauty in debasement. I just had to clean out our compost bin, which is like the stinkiest thing in the world. And I literally thought, this is just like the Model Actress album. Like, I was debasing myself with this like mold and just juice and just bleh, all this dark and light. The lead singer is quoted, I read somewhere, as saying, "It's an exploration of love and loss, as it is a sharp, piercing, violent ode to the explosive joy of being alive, the overwhelming brightness of staring at the sun." So, very much, it is not a gay album in the sense that it is totally universal and talking about experiences that we've all had. Everything that he just says right there is something that I can relate to. But also, I think it is important to recognize it is specifically gay. It is specifically about that human experience. And I often think about, when I was much, much younger and my experiences with Morrissey and the Smiths, and that was where I was really questioning myself. A song like Hand in Glove, which really taught me more, because at the time when I first heard that song, I'd never met anybody who was out, right? And I remember listening to that song and sort of understanding something. And this is where I think it's interesting, where often people who are in marginalized groups will correctly say, with an understandably angry tone, "It's not my job to teach you," which is true. But that doesn't mean it's not my job to learn. And so when there's music like this that opens up a sort of way of seeing into universal aspects of gay relationships, specific aspects of gay relationships, I feel like I can learn without somebody who is trying to teach me, right? Which is the best way to learn, because it's not their job. You see, I have Perfume Genius behind me. I feel a similar way, in the way that when I listen to Perfume Genius's music, I feel like I understand, connect, and empathize with his life, the experiences he's had, what it's like to be a handsome gay rock star in their early 30s. And in a very similar way, I feel that this album gives me that view. Not a whole view. I'm not saying I understand the life experience. I'm not saying that I'm an expert, right? I'm still just a tourist, right? But still, it grants me some sort of insight. And what I'm getting a view into is a very violent, unpleasant world. What I really feel from this is I get the sense that the singer is trying to put us in a place where he's describing blood and sweat and violence and sex, but that what they're really looking for is warmth and love. And that's that asymmetrical relationship. I don't know if this is an album about one person, about two people, whatever. 10 people, doesn't matter. What matters is this guy is never on the same page as his lover, just the entire album. And that's why I find this theme of the sun so fascinating. And I don't know, I might be reading too much into this, but what it feels like to me is that this emphasis on the dawn is like, if you are in a sexual relationship, right? Because it's always implied that he's in these very sexual relationships. It's a very sexual album. It's not like direct, it's coded, but it's as subtle as putting two bananas behind you and making you think that you're not making a funny joke about dicks, right? I'm making a funny joke about dicks by having two bananas back there. And a banana on my shirt. And a banana. Well, actually, that banana is just for Velvet Underground. But it's that kind of subtle. But the sense that you get is that it's this very unfulfilling moment where the night of sex with the person who is wanted then passes on to the day, and then in the day, like vampires, like he just disappears, and that sunlight is dawning, and instead of sharing that light with somebody who he cares about, he's facing it alone. Now, let's talk about the title. The title suggests strongly Ulysses by James Joyce. And the first track of the first album makes direct reference to walking the Strand, which is the river in Dublin, where he walks around in this book, Ulysses by James Joyce. That was pointed out on Lyric Genius. I would have got there eventually, but hey, it's always nice to have correct annotations on Lyric Genius. This is, speaking of my dad, this is his copy. It's kind of cool. It's got his initials in there. And I took this from his estate. We threw out a lot of his books, sadly, but I made sure to get this one because I knew he loved this book, and I've actually never read it, so I'm reading it now. So that's my new thing. This album has prompted me to read it. When you are like an academic in the humanities, it's not like I don't know the character of Bloom. It's not like I don't know how it was an important early modernist novel that played with narrative and perspective and stream of consciousness writing. Like, I know a lot about this book. I can talk to you about this book with some level of expertise, but I've never actually like sat down and read it and enjoyed it. But the important thing is there's this whole section of this story in which he comes across. So the whole story is about just, if you haven't, read it with me, would you? Like, seriously, just read it. It's all, I mean, so far it's great and it's so important because it's like just following this like sort of nobody who's just walking around. That's it. That's the whole, some nobody who's walking around, and he comes across a dog's body, and it's this sort of figure of, I suppose a dog represents faithfulness and domesticity, and so to find a dog's body that is like dead and there, sort of like decrepit, kind of an interesting theme, kind of an interesting image. I also think there's an actual definition. Well, I know there's a definition of Dogsbody. It's someone who does menial tasks. So it's a synonym for like a grunt or like a gopher, right? And for some reason, what it really made me think of was It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So this is not, I do not think this is I am nearly positive that nobody in model/actriz was thinking of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. But Charlie work, this is how it's described in the show. Because Charlie is a dog's body in the show. A therapist asks him, Charlie work? What's Charlie work? Fill me in. Oh, right. You don't even know what... Well, Charlie work is like, like basement stuff. Like cleaning urinals, blood stuff, your basic slimes, your sludges, anything dead or decay. I'm on it. I'm dealing with it. And you dislike it. Well, no, I mean, at its core, I love it. I love the dark. I love slippery things. I love being naked in the sewer. Bleach smells good, tastes good. But it's just like, I don't like being told what to do. End scene. It's from season 8, The Gang Gets Analyzed. The reason I think of that is that that's very much what this album is like. It's naked, it's in the sewer, it's dark, it's blood, it's your basic slimes, your sludges. That's really the world that we're in. But at the same time, it's not it doesn't feel gross, but it does feel a certain level of like attack, which I'll discuss when I discuss the style of the album, which I'll get to now. The style, the music of the album. It's kind of a vibe album in the way that it has a very consistent feeling all the way through. It has a couple quiet moments, but for the most part, it is a series of songs that start off with some kind of aggravating sound, and then the lead singer's ridiculously sexy voice discussing dangerous and sexy things, talking, and then just this whole play of just dynamics. But the dynamics are often like a little quiet and aggravating to loud and industrial. You are stuck inside of a machine. Often the bass is rumbling. Often there's some kind of like aggravating sound that sort of keeps you from being ever at ease. The vocals are always firmly in that kind of cool post-punk, 21st century post-punk of just like half singing, half speaking. He does every once in a while like sing, and when he does, it's just like, wow, it's just amazing. The growl, the kind of low growl, it's that sort of attraction of self-destruction. That's what I have the feeling of. And there's always this very interesting, rhythmically interesting things happening all the way through. As far as the defining sound, I actually brought my guitar. And I'm going to play for you, right now, the defining way to play a guitar in model/actriz style. Are you ready? Okay? Up here, at the top of a guitar, there are, because it's so tight to the tuning pegs on the guitar head, it makes that kind of aggravating, very high-pitched sound. I'm not sure if they're actually using this or an instrument that imitates this, but I swear to God, I have spent a lot of time in my life, like when I was in high school and I had a guitar, just being like, what if that was a song? What if that was a song? That's like the stabbing, piercing, dissonant, high, piercing vibe of this album. And if you have a guitar, go to Guitar Center, okay? Plug in the guitar as loud as you possibly can. And just do it. And see if they kick you out. And put it on TikTok. Don't actually bother people who work at Guitar Center. For the most part, they're all struggling musicians. So don't turn up as loud as you can. Now, when it comes to the other things about those sounds I was making, there's another thing that's in my head, and you see it behind me here. And that's Alfred Hitchcock. Again, I don't think that this is what the band is going for. But those kinds of stabby sounds that you can make with a guitar, the music reminds me strongly of the composer Bernard Herrmann, who did he did the Citizen Kane score, and he did the score for a lot of the sort of the typical Hitchcock psycho theme that you think of, that kind of highly suspenseful. There's a suspense to this music. And there's often something which I think is dramatic irony. Okay, so Hitchcock was a master of dramatic irony. If you don't remember what it is, shame on you. Your high school English teacher tried so hard. Dramatic irony is when you know something that the character doesn't know. So if right now behind me, right, coming out of my fireplace, there was some kind of ghoulish fiend and I wasn't paying attention, you would know, and you would have the stress and you would have the excitement. You know something that I don't. This whole album feels like he's singing on top of dynamite. And like we know that that part of the song is coming, that the chaos, that the cascading industrial cataclysm is going to arrive and blow up the song. And there's just this constant sense of gloaming and impending stabbing. And so that's how it makes me feel very Hitchcocky. Speaking of cocky, let's talk about the album cover. It's a dildo. So just to celebrate this review, I'm going to do something very funny here. For that Hitchcocky joke, smash the like button and subscribe. That's really cool for me if you do that. And if you type in AVAA, then that will be mean awesome video as always, and I will give you a heart on that comment, as I always do. Beyond that, you can join my Patreon and all that stuff. Hilarious. So speaking of Hitchcocky, let's talk about the album cover, because I didn't notice it. Again, I saw it, and the thing is, like, the Jeff Rosenstock album cover is very much in the mode of this kind of Black Midi album cover, and I thought that this Dogsbody album was the same kind of like vaguely, I don't know, sort of weird looking colors, semi-abstract. There is no meaning. We're not just going to do a picture of all the members of the band in silhouette or some kind of weird Beatles thing. This is going to be that. And then finally, like 10 minutes before recording, I realized it's a dick. But it's like decorated almost like a Day of the Dead devotional. It's like a Day of the Dead devotional dildo. Say that. I'll tell you what. If you're cool, you will scream those words right now. Why am I trying to get you into trouble today? Go down to Guitar Center and scream Day of the Dead devotional dildo. And it seems like a joke, right? But it's not. It's not. I mean, penises, dicks, are a huge part of this album. And let's face it, it's a huge part of most sexual relationships. Many of them. Okay? Statistically, the majority of sexual relationships involve penises at some point, right? But more than that, it's like having it be sort of like decorated in this way, that sense of devotion and almost holiness. It's playing around with a lot of these themes that I think this album can sort of play with sort of the low and the high, right? The inversion of values, of having something that looks like it's made for devotion that's theoretically, and I actually think it's actually a plaster cast, which takes me on a whole other tangent. Did you know there was a groupie in the 60s who would take plaster casts of rock stars' penises? Her name was Cynthia Plastercaster. And she, oh my God, I can probably see that now. She did Jimi Hendrix and was very famous, but I've never seen it, obviously, because I would never know where to look. That's probably on the internet. I don't even know if I'm going to look, though. Anyways, it's that basic idea, and I think that's interesting, and I think it's strong, and I think it shows that if I had paid any attention at all to this album before listening to it, it would have been very clear where it was coming from. So, let me give you an example of what the song sounds like with the stamp. I'm going to go with the example song, Maria. Okay, it's my favorite track on the album, probably. I can't tell. There's so many good tracks on this album. This album is stupid good. I'm so happy that you encouraged me to review it. Click above the banana above Hitchcock. Hilarious. That's a quote from the Despicable Me 2 trailer. Hilarious. So, right now, right off this song, this is the dramatic irony that I'm talking to you about. There's going to be a breakdown, a big explosion. Okay, I want you to imagine that lead singer. I really should have looked up his name beforehand, but doesn't matter. I'll just keep calling him lead singer. Imagine him singing, and imagine underneath his feet there's a bomb that says 2 minutes and 22 seconds, because that's how long it's going to take before there's going to be a boom, a great breakdown and a great booming explosion. So this whole time this is going to be happening, it's going to start with this funky drums, very tight, very nice, very tasteful, excellent drumming all the way through. Lots of space in this drum beat. It's like there's a lot of space in here. And again, we sort of have a lot of that kind of rhythms that are happening here. It sounds stabbing. There is real guitar as well, not just the stuff played at the top of the head or whatever kind of weird zither instrument they're using to imitate that sound or that reminds me of that sound. But the guitar is mainly used to sort of punctuate the end of a phrase. It's basically like a funk song if you really break it down. And the way that he's singing is like here he's singing in his most kind of Bowie mode. And then it gets super loud, and we have this lyric that could be the lyric of the entire album, I am not the man for him. A reminder that no matter how like blood and guts and sex and blood this album ever gets, at the heart of it, it's I'm not the man for him. That's the pain, right? That's the universal thing, because it could be I'm not the man for her, and I would be like, oh, I felt that way before. And then it just gets quiet. Just this guitar. The drums get a little more complicated. The guitars come in doing this little trick with a volume knob where it goes wah, like that. And it's this sweet part. I collect the dew falling from his chest. I collect all the thorns wrapped around his quietness. Now, that's a beautiful line, right? It reminds me of reasons which shouldn't be too weird. Probably one of my best friends, definitely when I lived in Marseille, was another American, and he was a gay guy, and he was an author. And I read some of his short stories, and one of the short stories was talking about playing with the semen on someone's chest, his lover's chest, and talking about the way that it smelled like bleach. And I was like, why'd you write that? And he's like, well, that's how semen smells. It does? I never smelled it. Yeah. No, that's how it smells. The kinds of things you don't know, the unexamined life. So for some reason, the way that he talks about, I think dew in this case is just sweat, right? But still, like there's an intimacy to this, an intimacy to touching a man's chest with the dew on it, right? That's very, very, very intimate. I grew up a total homophobe. So there's still a part of me that hears this and feels sort of like, ugh, right? Like I can still connect to that part of me that would have rejected this for that. Fortunately, that part of me is primitive and mostly exiled, but I can still hear the echoes of my high school self. It gets more intense. I wish he would remove the blade from my neck. I know he waits for me to do it myself. I believe this is a figural knife. I know that there is a thing called knife play, and I don't kink shame on this channel, but don't stab each other. That's not sexy. That's weird. It's not weird. It's dangerous. It's not weird. It's not. There's nothing wrong. No shame. But don't stab each other. Anyways, full distortion, complete madness, sings these lines, holds me with eyes that sing, I am not the man for him. The eyes sing, I am not the man for him. It's beautiful. And then these fully woozy sounds, and the drums are even more emphatic. The hi-hat, great hi-hat work all the way throughout this album, gets slightly opened, kind of like a sloshy. So many great dynamics in this song, in this album, just dynamics upon dynamics upon dynamics. And then it gets even quieter. No drums, just the singing and this kind of singing. And there has never been a sharper object. Okay, he sings it even better than I do. It sounds even... I'm going to get copyright struck because I did such a good job of imitating this song. I don't mind. There's never been a sharper object than the dawn when it's unraveling over my skin. So again, this image of the sun as being an attacker. That this night of sex and this waking up with the dew, right? I imagine what it is that the sweat is like from a man's chest hair in the morning, and then the dawn is rolling over him and attacking him. And his voice goes up high with, then the dawn... And he very rarely goes into a higher register, but when he does, it's so powerful. And waiting when I'm tracing the shadow of his arm on me. And then his voice goes super low in that great kind of low Bowie style. Of his arm on me. When I feel the weight growing under, and then goes up super high. It's so beautiful. And then this is the moment I was talking about. Did you forget about the bomb? Now it's just actually it's this kind of explosion sound with high horror sounds in the back. It's slightly off rhythm. It's slightly unsettling. You're constantly trying to make some form that you understand out of this chaos, but you can't quite. And then when you think it's all over, it comes back to the chorus, a noisier version of the chorus. You're living in the rubble of the song. You're the entire amphitheater has been exploded, and there's blood and there's guts and there's bombs everywhere, and there's just this rubble, and the rubble is this chorus of this unrequited love. I am not the man for him. Damn. You can also buy my mug. You can also buy my mug. God, I'm so bad at self-promotion. I don't sell any merch. What's wrong with my merch, everybody? All right. So I'm going to go through the rest of the album a lot quicker. Actually, and sometimes slower. There's a lot of literary stuff in this album. And I don't just... Look at that. The eye isn't properly covered. Okay. Sorry. If you're going to have a joke, you have to commit to the joke. You know what I'm saying? Nothing's funnier than a half-hearted punchline. Nothing's less funny. Jesus Christ. Donkey Show is the first track, and it begins with a very angry electronic ring. Okay, so I like this album and I want to listen to it, but also my wife doesn't like listening to music that is aggravating. It's not that she doesn't think it's good, it's that it has the intended effect of aggravating her, which is quite frustrating because I love this song. But it starts off with a sound where you're like, is there something wrong? Is there an alarm? Next door to me, Rochester is a great town for many different reasons. It's one of the centers in the whole country for people who can't hear, right? For the deaf. And sometimes there would be these alarms next door. And obviously the alarms would be mostly visual, but they'd also have an auditory component to them so that people around could hear them. And one time they went away for a vacation and I didn't have their numbers or anything. So there was just this like horrible ring and flashing next door for like a whole weekend. It feels like that, kind of a headache thing. And then there's these weird laughing, squeaking sounds. Flipper the Dolphin. Flipper was a TV show, which super old, before my time, but I used to watch it on repeat. And dolphins are rapists, assholes, as you hopefully know that about dolphins. So this is a rapist dolphin asshole laughing at you. I was listening to this in the other room with my baby, and the dog like freaked out. Like seriously, Toby was like looking around. Toby's... See, he's right there, right now. But seriously, when I was playing this song, his ears were up and he was like on full alert. Every day the sun turns slowly over me, the pain of the sun. The voice just gets so intimate, the bass is slow, and this angry bass drum just comes in. At a certain point, the hi-hat's on the 2 and the 4. 1, 2, 3, once. All night, me and my electronic devices. It's almost like heavy metal, like plodding and with this droning. And the whole thing is this a dream? Is he actually acting out? Is he... Okay, because this song gets very... This goes directly to Sexy Town, okay? But I think he's imagining it. Oh, if you don't have an approach, that doesn't mean I won't show you all night, me and my wretched device. So it gets really erotic later, right? Oh, you don't have to try and be gentle. Do it the way you feel right now. I know it's hard. I feel you rise to the occasion in the black light. I'm shining for you here. So he's implying that he's with somebody who's getting erect while he's with him. But I think because he keeps going back to the me and my electronic device, it feels to me more like a fantasy, a sort of lonely fantasy of what he could be doing. Next track is called Mosquito. Mosquito is the name of a... if you were an edgelord in high school, Mosquito was the coolest band you could have possibly listened to. It was one of the guys from Sonic Youth who wanted to make like really edgy music. It is absolutely unlistenable. It's great. Nothing to do with this song. Just throwing that out there. This has kind of a the boots and cats style sound in the back. This album does get sort of disco-y at times. I Want This Life. The voice is in the lead. Rhythmic is like fun. It's like offbeat, fast things. He sort of goes into this sort of ingredients, and again, it's as subtle as Cherry Pie by Warrant. Okay, if you've never heard the song Cherry Pie by Warrant, congratulations. It's not very subtle. Frothed milk, honey butter in my fortified cherry reduction. Just lots of these sort of images here. Cool kind of waka waka sounds. And then we get to this line with a body count higher than a mosquito. Now this is sort of like a punchline, like a rap style punchline. Like, oh, I got a body count higher than a mosquito. And this is where, like, I'm uncomfortable with where my mind... This line takes me to interpretations that I don't feel as a not gay man. I don't feel like I have permission or that I have enough lived experience of that life to describe what I feel. I'm going to do it anyways because I've given you this preface. But I mean, obviously, blood and the AIDS epidemic, right? Blood as a sometimes byproduct of all sex, statistically probably more often from gay sex, tying into a mosquito killing people. Mosquitoes the most deadly animal in the world besides human beings. I'm deep. Mosquitoes are just, they kill everybody, and it's blood and it's piercing. So we're past the AIDS crisis. Fortunately, we figured out a way to largely manage people who have HIV, and we have largely made it to a place where this is not a catastrophe that's killing all sorts of people all the time. But do you see why I'm a little bit uncomfortable here? And feel free to tell me in the comments, like, Sky, you went too far and you shouldn't have talked about it. And I'll even delete this if it's not cool for me to say it. But I think that's part of what we're... Because body count, I hate that term, by the way. Hey, young people, stop it. Stop it. Don't refer to how many sexual partners you've had as body count. That's lame. Okay? Body count is for murderers. Okay? You don't kill people when you have sex with them. You have the consensual fun time. You have a zesty encounter, right? How about you ask each other how many zesty encounters have you had, okay? It's just gross, body count. Anyways, he's playing around with a lot of these things. I don't think this is about AIDS, but it's really hard not to feel sex and blood and death in a gay context and not go to that place. But I regret. Hey, well, you tell me. Was that a good enough point? Was it overly obvious? Am I being too full of precaution? I don't know. Crossing Guard is the next song. More kind of pulsing songs, very rhythmically interesting. Again, this was the first time I was listening. I just said, this dude is way too sexy. He sings this song. So I said disco on the last song. There's a whole thing that happened in the early 2000s. Like Franz Ferdinand, take me out, down, 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 where there's all these cool like indie rock songs that were actually just disco. And this is one of those, except with the addition of the sound of grinding subway brakes. I think I read that this band is from Delaware, but they live in New York. You can correct me in the comments. Which, hey, Delaware. Got Biden. Okay. You got my friend Mark. He lives there now. And you got this band. What else? Doesn't matter. First state. But they all live in New York. I think now they said Brooklyn probably. So the grinding subway brakes is what this reminds me of. A very, very, very catchy chorus. You don't have to submit yourself. A very cool instrumental bit. More kind of boots and cats with the 2 and the 4 on the hi-hat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. This really nice rumbling, consistent bass. And then, god damn it, I happen to read on Lyric Genius. I don't try to read everything, but when they talk about the Crossing Guard, they're not talking about Mrs. Bonanno when I was in elementary school in Massachusetts. No, they're talking about Dante again. How often do I gotta talk about Dante on this channel? Listen, I got Dante, a full marble bust of Dante behind me at all times, so I'm a pretty well-placed person to talk about Dante here. At the Crossing Guards relay, there's no hands left to take, so grab me by the teeth and whisper it to me. So the Crossing Guard is referring to as Charon, who helps to cross the river into hell, into a different phase of hell. Here is how it's described by Dante in in the Inferno in the Divine Comedy. Straightway in silence fell the shaggy creaks of him, the boatman o'er the livid lake, around whose eyes glared wheeling flames. Meanwhile those spirits, faint and naked, colors changed, and gnashed their teeth. Soon as cruel words they heard, God and their parents they blasphemed, the humankind, the place, the time, and seed that did engender them and give them birth. Then all together sorely wailing drew the cursed strand that every man must pass who fears not God. Charon, demonic form with eyes of burning coal, collects them all, beckoning, and each that lingers with his oar strikes. This is a big-ass copy of Dante's Inferno that was illustrated by Gustave Doré. Stupid Toby thinks that this is food, so he bit off the binding, so my copy's all messed up. But there's an image of Charon, which might help you to understand what he looks like. But the thing is, he's a very aggressive guy, so if you noticed in there, the crossing guard doesn't just let people in, he also has to, like, beat them off with an oar. So here's an image of that. This book is way too heavy. You see? See, there he is. So that's the kind of guy that Charon is. I actually also happen to have a copy of this illustrated by Salvador Dali, which I think fits this image a lot more. I think this right here works super well with this album, right? Come on, all right? Have you ever seen more beautiful backsack in a piece of art? There he is with the oar. Look in between his legs, how you see the person looking up, pleading, who's about to get whacked by the oar. I want you to have this image in your head when you listen to the song. That's why I do this, by the way. That's why, because if they're trying to make you think of Charon, I want you to think of the crossing guard as this guy. Passenger to this guy, and then to this guy, and then to this guy. So the lyrics feel that it's about transporting people across. It also has a feeling maybe of a promiscuous lover who's with this guy and this guy and this guy. I don't quite know. I don't quite understand exactly how it ties in to Dante or exactly what it means. But at least you have the image in your head of Dali's Charon. He kind of mailed it in on a lot of those illustrations that he did, and I think the Charon one's super good. Next track, what's cool is that the next track, it says, he says, like, it feels like, and he never finishes it. And then, I was taking notes on this album. I didn't even notice that the song changed because it was so similar to the last one, because the next song starts and it's pressure. It comes right in there. And it's all about just this craving, it's this addiction to love narrative, right? When I walk, it's your way. When I breathe, it's your name. When I crave, it's your hands. When I dream, it's your face. Just a really bad toxic relationship with no boundaries. It's funny because when I was listening to this, this was the song, the first listen, where I was like, oh, maybe this is actually about a man and not about a woman, just because I'm so heteronormative. I can't help it. That's how I was raised. I mean, I can't help it. I'm fighting that. But I am, my default is heteronormative. It's the way it is. I'm working on it. But it reminded me, that the way that he was singing about this sort of like this devotion and this love, it reminded me of way before South Park. I had the same realization that a lot of songs about God, about Jesus, that are sung in sort of super evangelical Christian churches, like, just sound very gay. It's, like, I want his love on me. I want his love pouring on me. Like, it's just all this stuff. It's like, geez, get a room, So I had that feeling listening to this, and this is where I understood, oh, okay. When I come upon myself meeting eye to eye, I belong to him. And this is the pain that he has. He belongs to somebody who doesn't really want him. And then we have the resolution of the dramatic irony with this horror sound at the end. Next track is Divers. So just with the title Divers, again, do you get what I'm saying about this dramatic irony? There's not always like some thing that happens, but it's just the suspense that's built up with this soundscape. Even this song, which is more downbeat, I have the image of someone swimming, and we're watching a movie, and behind him is some kind of ancient evil from the deep, some kind of dark fish beast that's like behind him, and we're watching him swim, and he doesn't know that it's like swimming up because he's diving. This is the song that reminded me the most of Perfume Genius, just with the instrumentation and the style of singing. I mean that in the best possible way. Great kind of bumping bass drum that comes in, and it's almost like it doesn't even... I think they told the drummer what to do, but didn't give him headphones so that he wouldn't be tempted to play exactly along with what he was listening to, because it's just a little bit off. It's very atmospheric. It's very scary, cool, downbeat, epic at the same time. It grows with this crescendo and the cymbals and ends with these bells. And then we get to the song Amaranth. Very noisy, loud instrumental song. Has this kind of blast and great kind of double hi-hat play. The guitar reminds me a lot of Rage Against the Machine style guitar, which again kind of goes into that sense of guitar as a rhythm instrument more than its melodic instrument. A lot more of... No, that's the actual guitar, Sky. That kind of action happening as well. I remember just these cool chucking guitars as well. The lyrics seem to be telling a story, and that's where my knowledge of plants really should have come through, you know? So this is the part of the show where I show you my... So there's the album cover. There's the little hidden dong. So as I looked up Amaranth, I was like, huh, what? Why did he choose Amaranth? I don't... Is there something about... Is there some kind of potential, and just hang with me here, is there some potential way to see something potentially phallic in this image? I don't know if there is. I don't know. So I think that's sort of the joke here, but also it's blood, and there's so much blood in this album, and it's just so much just like aggravation and just... all talking about like these thorns. It's just constantly in this world of just violence and sex and sadness. Next track is called Pure Mode. It's this rumbling sound, again, kind of a weird waltz with sort of an explosion rumbling sound here. The industrial style hi-hat, like it sounds like a hi-hat on a drum machine that's making industrial music, and it sounds like a ticking. Again, that's sort of like, is it a bomb ticking? The snare's almost out of sync. It's too much. That's the weirdest misspeak. Out of stink? If you're watching this far, feel free to just type the words out of stink. I'll probably forget and be like, why is everyone typing out of stink? The snare is almost out of sync. There's so much great drum work happening on this album that is happening because it is intentionally trying to be just enough off that you feel something is wrong, something uncanny, but you're not quite there thinking it's full polyrhythm or anything. It builds in, there's all these words, keeps talking about penetration, all kind of in that realm there. I thought it started on this like new song, these like weird eighth notes and a cool boop for the last words. You know, these lyrics, you know, talking about entering a pure mode. I don't know, this feels very, and I don't know how old these guys are. You know, I imagine they're in their early 20s, mid-20s, late 20s. There's this whole thing like of people talking about like villain mode, which kind of goes back to that like bodies. Like there's a lot of weird violence in youth slang right now. I suppose there's always been, but now that I'm old, I can find a problem with it. Like, you know, like you can just be garbage. You don't have to like have a cool word for it. You know, you don't have to go, I'm in my villain mode. I'm just garbage. You just say you're garbage. You know. I don't mean to scare you, but I can't talk right now. It's a beautiful lyric. Then we get to Maria the Stamp, which leads beautifully into Sleepless, which, like these two songs, Maria into Sleepless. God, this album is so good. Thank you to the 24% of you who voted for this. It's amazing. Just the keyboards are like blurred and blared out. I think the person who did this, who produced this, Seth, I want to say Manchester, also did some Lingua Ignota and did Daughters. I've actually never heard Daughters, but I listened to that X-Ray album, so I don't know. But there's some great production happening here. Just it gets sort of like, it pulls into focus as it gets less distorted, but it's so distorted to start. And just whenever he goes into a high voice, it's you know, it's sort of like it's sort of unfair, when someone has a trick that they can do and they can get you to emote and feel so much, but he just kind of saves it for certain times. A very emotional voice. At some point, maybe in the next month, I'll just do a video about the song The Rip by Portishead. I feel like it might be one of the most influential songs of the 21st century. I know that Radiohead directly covered it and would talk about it a lot. And Portishead is obviously great, but if you've never heard it, really have a listen to it because it's from 2000, I want to say 2006, 2007. But it just has this ability, this atmosphere, this feeling, this hybrid sort of synthesizer and acoustic instrumentation and just haunting voice. I hear the rip everywhere, and I hear the rip in this song. I feel like if you listen to them back to back, you'll really hear it. More blasted out, like dissolution of sound, and ends timidly with these guitars and maybe even a voice box and all these warbled guitars. And like, they're so, like, the guitar is so, like, everything's so sparing in this album, except for the dude's voice. Everything, like, the drums are sparing. They're great, but they're restrained. The bass is always there, but it's restrained. And, like, the guitars are either doing sort of, like, chugga stuff or kind of doing stuff. So I like this because it's this warbled guitar and a crescendo on the cymbals. And it all leads into Sun In, the most masterfully produced song. I don't know how to describe to you how these songs sound like. This weirdly manipulated guitar lines that sound like bells. More of that too, but the guitar actually comes in. It's actually like a normal guitar line, like just playing chords. I can get back now from 2 years ago. Simple, clean guitar lines happening here. Like, this is sun. This is about the sun. I thought it was about Sun In, which is a product that you put in your hair that makes your hair blonder. My hair color used to be a lot lighter, and I remember I was at the Walmart in Temescal in Oakland when I lived in Oakland. Not a Walmart, a Walgreens. Kind of a sketchy Walgreens back then. Kind of a locus of nefariousness. But I remember holding on to the Sun In, thinking, should I try to go blonder? I ended up not doing it. But it's not about that, actually. It's actually about letting the sun into yourself. But it's about this. I can get back after 2. So now I'm wondering, like, okay, so was this whole thing about one relationship with someone who he was with for 2 years and now he's breaking up with them? What I imagine more is that it's sort of a toxic on-again, off-again thing with someone who's not as into him as he is into him, and just that longing, that asymmetrical love. And then he says how it's just so bright with the sun in my eyes. And that's the feeling. And what I want, I want Ulysses too. I want Dogsbody too. Like, what happens now? Like, now that you're hopefully over this guy, what you been up to? Things working out? I didn't need to mention their name, model/actriz. That's what we only think of Zoolander. Is it just me? Zoolander that has the Slashy Awards where Fabio gets the award. Thank you for thinking of me as an actor/model, not a model/actor, something like that. I don't know, but it's a funny reference and an interesting idea too, like the idea of a model/actress. That is a weird thing that we have now, where the /model/ happens to a lot of people. Like, most models now are models and something else. These are my Patreons. So I'm now going to figure out whether or not I'm going to buy this album. So the problem is I live in a household and the soundscape is pretty aggravating, but I really enjoy this album and like listening to it. So I think I'm going to go on Bandcamp. I'm going to order this album. And I'll just play it when my wife's upstairs or something, And also, like, the whole album, I happen to play it, So there you go. These are my Patreons. They help me to buy music. Like this. I also said that anyone who wants a personalized shout out at the end of this video can have one. But I posted it like right before recording the video. So let me see if anyone has jumped on here or not. Has anyone asked? No. So there you go. All right. Well, until next time, I hope you enjoyed the criticism. I hope you forgive the many silly dick jokes. But it's fun. It's Tuesday, end of the semester. And until next time, there's the camera.